What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Shoot the Gap, the IDP Fantasy Football show here at Fantasy and Frames and on the Fantasy and Frames podcast. I'm your host, Jorge Edwards. With me, got Justin Taylor. JT, week 3, man. We're cruising along this season. Got a lot to talk about. So let's just cut to the chase and get right to it. So I know we're talking defense in this show, and we kind of keep it to defense. But let me ask you a question, just in general, about your fantasy season so far. How much have the injuries just pulled your teams? Because every roster I look at, for me, I have like on my bench, out of like a 10-person roster or bench, it's like 6 or 7 of them are out, IR. And it's like, what the hell?
Yeah, it's been a rough start. I'm one of those guys that's always pushing for a few more like IR spots during my leagues, because I just know I feel like I'm maxed on IR spots in almost all my leagues at this point. It's been a rough start. And it's like the teams that I really needed those guys like real bad, and I didn't have guys to really back them up. I'm now getting murdered. One of my worst fantasy overall weeks ever last week. My win percentage was real bad. Starting to feel like the Panthers. Gonna have to pull it together here going into week 3. That's right. We just move along, right? We chug along, keep the dream alive. Hopefully week 3 we're bouncing back. Though I don't know who's going to be in my starting lineup in a ton of leagues because it's real ugly right now.
Before I get to asking you a question about that real quickly, because you brought up the Panthers, Charlene has a comment in the chat over on YouTube, which, by the way, if you're watching on X or Facebook, if you can head over to our YouTube channel and hit that subscribe button, notification bell. That way you're notified when Fantasy and Frames put out awesome fantasy football content. We really appreciate it. Charlene says, I have one league with a very shallow bench, 4 spots plus 2 IR. Wow. I have 4 guys out. Wow.
I'm in the same boat, Charlie. I have a league that's a super shallow bench. Only 4 reserve spots. We start, I think, 10 or 11 in this league, but we only have 4 bench spots. It's a weird league that you have to like constantly work the waiver wire and know when to pick up and drop guys. It never fails that my top 2 this is an auction league. It never fails that my top 2 or 3 guys I spend money on immediately get hurt. I have to put them on the IR, and then the other guys I want to get to pick them up as backups to cover for them. Somebody else gets hurt, and then I have to go, oh, my RI is full. My IR, is already full, and I'm sitting there going, am I going to have to drop one of these other guys, like these studs, because I like don't have enough guys to fill my roster? And just think, we're not even to bye weeks yet, people. If there was bye weeks right now, it would be panic time of like, who am I even starting in my lineup? I know how she feels, man. That league, I'm in it with, it's called the Dad's League. I'm in it with a bunch of guys that all have elementary school kids. But dude, every year that league kills me because I like my guys, like to hold them, and just having to drop and pick up guys every week is just brutal.
Charlene goes on to comment that, first of all, Cooper Kupp and AJ Brown are 2 of the people on her bench.
She sounds like exact same league I'm in. Super flex type of league. Quarterback hurt. I've got CMC already out for me, which everyone laughed when we did our auction because they're like, JT is gonna bid him up because I love CMC and he's gonna get him, blah blah blah. So I bid him up, did all that. I think I spent the most money in the league on him. He immediately gets hurt, which has happened to me pretty much every year. And then same thing. I had Cooper Kupp in that league. I'm thinking I'm feeling great. And then Cooper Kupp gets hurt. So I'm like, okay, there's 2 IR spots. Well, Kupp I can't even put on IR because this league doesn't do out or doubtful. They only do IR. So I'm already like sitting with Kupp on the bench, 1 or 2 other guys on the bench. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is going to be a long year in this league at this point.
Yeah, one of my coworkers, she was asking me, she was having a question about the tight end position, and I'm like, she's like, yeah, I had to take Evan Ingram out of my lineup and put him on the bench. I'm like, why don't you put him on IR? And she was trying to, and I'm like, oh, they have it set so you can only be on IR if you are actually on IR, which I have mixed feelings about.
I will jump in real quick. I know that's not what we're talking about in this show, but I'm a huge fan of can go on IR because we've seen it now because you can sit guys, they're not playing. I mean, they're not playing. The team says they're out this week. They're out 2 to 3 weeks, but they don't go on IR. And then just having to sit on that guy or make the decision, especially in dynasty leagues where I'm like, I got to drop a guy I want to keep because I need someone to fill a spot during a bye week. I'm a big fan of the out. I all my leagues, I let everybody put out guys on IR. I know John McGlynn's against that. Me and John McGlynn definitely are against that on the commissioner evaluation show. He does not in any of his commissioner leagues he commissions, but I am a big fan of the out and IR.
So let me ask you, out of all your IDP leagues, I'm just talking about IDP players, who's getting the Bryce Young treatment on your roster?
The people are just out on. There's I'm just totally done on.
People that you've been either holding out hope for, or you're just I can't anymore with this guy.
Oh man, that's a great question. I should have been thinking about that coming here. I think whoever people else is, I'd have to tell you, coming into the season, it was freaking Nick Cross, which is crazy. I had Nick Cross on probably, I'm not even gonna lie to you, probably 4 to 5 IDP leagues, and I've been holding him for this now going on his 3rd season, thinking that he was eventually going to be the guy who's going to move in. They moved Blackman to strong safety. They go he's going to be the free safety. I'm like, he's going to be the free safety. He didn't even play free safety in college. So I dropped him everywhere ending the season. I was like, I just don't have no bench spot for him. And he's just going to be free. He's not going to be great. And I had Blackman on a ton of leagues. So I was like, I don't need both safeties for the Colts. Well, I ate that one because Cross, as we'll talk about in this show, is off to a fantastic start for the Colts. Not good for the Colts. Good for him in IDP purposes. Bad for the Colts when your safety is leading the league in tackles. But that's where the Colts are at right now. Rough start here on defense for them.
Yeah, for me, I may be talking about him a little bit later in the show during our fades and plays segment. But I'll give you an extra one. And he came on strong towards the end of last season at the defensive back position, specifically at safety. PJ Locke. You see him get into it with Coach on the sidelines after he roughed his
I did see that.
I was like, dude, what are you doing? Sean Payton's not putting up with your BS, man. What are you
for a guy that finally kind of worked his way in there, and you're like, oh, he's going to be the guy. You're like, oh man, that's not a good look for you. That's not bad. Charlene said on here, I was gonna say, she says, I despise when I can't put an out player on IR. Absolutely agree with you, Charlene. Thank you. I agree. You should be able to put out players. Definitely when the team is saying they're out 2 to 3 weeks guaranteed. I think those players should be able to allow it on IR. So at least one person out there agrees with me.
Well, speaking of players that are either on IR or injured or questionable, that there's a lot of news and notes to talk about that. So why don't we get
I'm going to have.
Sorry, I interrupted you. What were you
about to say? I was saying I'm going to try to keep my mouth shut because there's a ton of news and notes to go through. So I was like, we got to move through the show. JT can't be talking all night for an hour and a half about news and notes, so I gotta let you get through them.
You know what, JT? You know what the benefit is of being the last show on Fantasy and Frames Wednesday? One, we're the last show, so we're not worried about people after us coming on air and having to be out of the studio by then. Two, I'm the boss. We can do whatever we want, so it's actually okay.
Hey, that's why I like late night, baby. That was my favorite part about the late night shows. You just always felt like they could just go off the rails at any moment because they're like, hey, dude, we're on at midnight, 1 a.m. We can say whatever jokes we want that the earlier shows can't say because no one's watching. It's super late. It doesn't matter. The women and children are in bed. We can say whatever we want late night. So I kind of
It's
feel
after
like
10 p.m.
we're in that spot, right? We're the late night show. We can do whatever we want.
Yeah, it's after 10 p.m. We're good. I got
right.
Bob Miller over at Dynasty Pros. What's going on, Bob? He's like, I got 2 words for you. Those are not the 2 words I was originally thinking about. Yes, I'm harkening back to Degeneration X in the WWE, but he says Kyle Hamilton, he needs to start producing from your mouth to God's ears, my friend. I gotta tell you.
That's right, Bob. Bob, huge Ravens fan. That was a brutal loss last week. I will say, I don't know who's out there in survivor pools. I had a survivor pool with 30 plus members already done, already over 2 weeks into the season. Everyone either had the Bengals or the Ravens the first 2 weeks. Everyone got knocked out. Can you freaking believe that? They split the pot with 7 people. At the end, 30 plus people in a survivor pool. They're like, should we just start it back up? I'm like, might as well. I'm like, that's freaking brutal. And you know what? Who was one of those people? Me. Bengals week 1, Ravens week 2, Dunskies. Survivor pool, not my game.
Got Adrian in the chat. Yo, Adrian! This is a defense show, man. We talk defense here, not offense, but you know what? It's okay. We'll answer this question for you. He says, should I trade Kiren Williams and Tank?
I'm guessing that's Tank Dell.
Bigsby or Tank Dell?
If it's Tank Bigsby, you're stealing, my friend. And good work by you, but I'm guessing that's Tank Dell.
Should you trade Kiren and Tank? No, I do not think you should do that for CeeDee Lamb. Obviously, it's roster dependent. Depends on what you have here, but you look at Kiren Williams. He is the guy, and he's healthy. That's important for him this part of this time of the year. And Tank Dell, you look at some of his efficiency metrics and his target numbers. Like, he's being targeted downfield quite a lot. It's just they haven't materialized into anything. You saw that would-be catch that he had down the middle of the field on Sunday Night Football. Had he caught it, he would have been off to the races. So he's definitely getting, like I said, the metrics are there. It's just a matter of time till he starts producing. Now, if you are desperate at the wide receiver position, and you have plenty of depth at running back, then yeah, sure, go ahead and make that trade.
I was gonna say I could totally see myself taking Lamb here. I really could. I'm just not a huge Kiren guy. I think Kyron's good, but I'm not a huge Kiren guy. I like Tank, all right. I could totally see me going, hey, depending on the Dynasty League, especially with Dynasty, I'm like, hey, I want the top producer. I'm going to take Lamb. Like you said, if I know I've got other running backs I can play, if I'm trading around or Ray Kiren and I'm like, oh, now I'm searching for an RB2 all year, might make it a little more difficult. But I could definitely see myself taking Lamb in this situation, depending on my team.
We got Summer in the chat. Thank you, Summer. This is what I'm talking about. Defense.
Hey, hey, we were just on this roll. We were just talking Rams DBs before the show.
Yeah, exactly. Should I drop Cam Curl for Quentin Lake? You know what? I know where you can get that answer from, and I'm putting this in the YouTube chat right now.
He's like,
we have a special writer with us this year, Gary Davenport. You may have heard of him. He's the godfather of IDP Fantasy Football, writes for NBC, for Football Guys, for Bleacher Report. Writes. He's needless to say, the guy gets around, and we're very fortunate that he's chose to be around us this year. And he put together a waiver wire column. He does that every single week, and in the waiver wire, he addresses this very question. So I'm going to drop this link in here. So why don't you head over to fantasyandframes.com, check it out. And of course, if you have any more IDP questions, just come along. And the only reason I'm putting this in the chat is because he was very specific about one person that you're talking about here. So check it out. Let us know what you think. But you have another question, though. I love this. I love it. Adrian,
we're getting the late nighters, man. We're getting the late nighters. They know we're on now. They know we're on late night. Here we go.
I love it. Okay, Summer again. Tough one, but I need 2 out of Cashman, Speed, Watt. Okay, so Watt, definitely, right? EJ Speed or Cashman. So, Ivan Pace isn't getting the snap percentages in Minnesota. He unfortunately, he's just not, and and people are, upset about that in terms of the fantasy community, because we were hoping that he'd be the guy who'd be getting the majority of snaps, and that's just not what's happening. He's efficient. It's just, you have to have the opportunity. Efficiency is great, but if you're not getting enough snaps on the field to utilize that efficiency, then, but Cashman last week, he went off against San Francisco. That being the case, as nicked up as this defensive line is for Indy, which we'll kind of get into a little bit, the Colts need all the playmakers they can get to apply pressure to the
they do.
field. So I would go EJ Speed and TJ Watt here.
And if you're the Bears, if you're not drawing up just every run play in the book this week, I don't know what you're doing as a coaching staff. I mean, they've been terrible against the run. You got to run the ball. You got to protect Kiren Williams. I think EJ Speed ends up with a ton of tackles this week because of that. On the other side, I don't know what the word is on Mixon. That would make a difference to me. If Mixon is a definite full go, I think obviously Texans run the ball a little more against Minnesota. If he doesn't, I can see this team passing a lot more, which is less work for Cashman. For me, I go Speed and Watt because I think every team is just going to come out and hammer the ball on the ground against the Colts until they figure out how to stop it. And with DeForest Buckner out, I've seen it over the last couple of years. Whenever him or Grover Stewart don't play, they cannot stop the run. And they've shown it the first couple of weeks with DeForest. Now they don't have him. Yeah, it's going to get ugly.
As the creatures of the IDP night start rolling in here, which thank you very much for tuning in to Shoot the Gap. If you wouldn't mind, if you're not already, head over to our YouTube page and hit that subscribe button. That would really do a lot of good for all the hardworking men and women here at Fantasy and Frames who put in a lot of time to give you their content. So we really appreciate that. That was some great questions. Gotta love it. Sober Money, last one on offense for the evening. He says, hello, I'm in a Dynasty League. I'm in a weird spot. I have Mahomes, Tua, Carr, Pollard, Jameson Williams, Gibbs, Digg, Evans. Jesus, dude. Ayuk, Pickens, Hawk, Henry. What problems do you have? They
said I was last in my league last week. This is the perfect example we talk about. Do not overreact too early in the season. Do not start selling players off until you are definitely out of the playoffs and somebody else in your league is now desperate to make a move because they have an injury and they need someone to kind of get in that playoff push. Do not sell right now. Do not do it. I started in one of my big dynasty leagues a couple years ago. I had been in the playoffs every year. I'd made the championship game or the Final Four every year, and I started 1-6. And I started thinking, like, do I make some moves or do I hold firm? Because I had injuries. I had a good team, but things weren't working out. I won 6 straight. Got to 7-6, slid in the playoffs, and guess what? Ended up in the championship game again because my team got healthy. Do not sell yourself short early on. You got a lot of nice pieces here. A lot of nice pieces. Do not sell yourself short too early. I always wait till at least 1 or 2 weeks before that trade deadline to kind of figure out like where I'm at. Can I make the playoffs? If I can't make the playoffs, what can I trade? What can I move to someone who really needs it so I can get the maximum return? So week 2 to me, way too early to be selling off.
I'm sorry. Did you say that you were 0-6, but then went on a 7-game winning streak?
I started 1-6, won 6 in a row to get to 7-6 to get in the playoffs. This is back prior when we had 13 weeks instead of 14 because of the adjustment. So started 1-6, won 6 in a row to get to 7-6 and slide into the last place in the playoffs, and then ended up making the championship game. And I made the championship game in quite a few of my leagues as the last seed in. So all you got to do is get in. And then from there, you can make some noise.
You're giving me some PTSD here because my wife in our home league started 0-6, went on to go get to 7-6, knocked me out of the playoffs because she had more points scored and we had the same record. And she went on to win our home league's title.
See, that's a perfect example, Jorge. It hurts when you're on the other side of it, but it happens more times than people think. If that is sober money, if your lineup was terrible, I'd say yes, make some moves. But you got some really good pieces there. I'm not making any moves too quick.
Yeah, agreed. And shout out to my wife for being an awesome fantasy football player.
It's a nice run by her. It's a nice run. I'm sure she loved to have the one up on you after that.
Yeah, I try and be humble and gracious in defeat, and you know what I get? I guess that makes me the one who should be giving advice here, not you. And I'm just like burn.
Oh,
yeah,
that one right there. That's a burn. That one hurts. That's right to the heart.
That's what I walk into every fantasy football draft and every fantasy football season with her. So fun times. Not fun times.
Hey, everybody says, hey, you should play fantasy with your spouse, and then those are when it burns you, and you're like, God, why did I let them in my league?
Rougarou in the chat. What's going on, Rougarou? Welcome back. You were back here last week. You were on the pregame show, I think. So welcome back to Shoot the Gap. Speaking of people who are not having a good time, let's talk about some players that are going on IR and or are out this week. Nate Landman plays on IR with a calf injury. JT, what are your thoughts on Kaden Ellis and Troy Anderson? Is one more fantasy viable or the other, or are they both good options for fantasy managers going forward?
I think with Landman officially being out, because that, we've had the trio. We've talked about it here. I've wrote about it a few times in articles here on Fantasy and Frames. It's kind of what do you do with these three guys? Now that Landman's officially out for a while, it opens the door for Troy Anderson to get back in there. I think Kaden Ellis is the more consistent player. I really like Troy Anderson. It's one of those, I can't help it. I loved him coming out of college. I just thought he was an absolute beast. If you talk to anybody from Montana, the state of Montana, I think 7 out of 10 times you ask them who's the best player from Montana ever, Troy Anderson is who people say. I mean, just the guy was unreal in college, just play a little bit of everything. I love Anderson's upside. If he can stay healthy, I was so on Anderson last year coming into the season before he got hurt. So it's tough for me. I'm picking him up everywhere for people that drafted him or dropped him in leagues. But I think Ellis is the safe floor play. If you're looking for if you're in a league where, if you get picks, turnovers, stuff I think Anderson has an outside shot, but I don't have a problem playing either one of them. And I own both of them in a lot of leagues. So I would have no problem playing both.
You look at the snap percentages that both players played last week. I mean, you're spot on with the Kaden Ellis take. He played 100% of snaps, had a tackle efficiency of 13.9, and PFF total tackles of 10. Anderson was right there with 94, with a tackle efficiency of 11.8 with 8 total tackles. I mean, these aren't mind-blowing, tackle efficiency numbers, but what is the mind-blowing part is that they have solid efficiency with opportunity. And so I'm right there with you. Both of these guys could be contributors as LB2s or LB3s, depending on the matchup. One would be a 2, depending on a very tasty matchup versus a run-heavy team versus otherwise an LB3 in different matchups there. All right, Terrell Bernard, Darren Johnson, out this week on Monday Night Football, which are 2 Monday Night Football games, folks, if you didn't know. It's Bills, Jaguars, and Cincinnati Bengals, and the Commanders, which, oh my God, I'm so looking forward to that. I say that sarcastically because I'm a Commanders fan and I know what's coming. I tell
you what, I do love when they pull out the old yellow pants. I think it's always so cool.
Thank you.
I love the yellow pants. I tell you what, man, I miss the yellow helmet with the yellow pants with a white jersey, which is such a sweet look. Yellow helmet, white jersey with the maroon numbers, and then the yellow pants with the stripes. Such a freaking good look.
See, you're slandering the Washington Commanders because there was another person who said we had maroon jerseys and yellow pants, and that was Jim Zorn.
Did I say maroon? I meant burgundy. Did I say maroon? Dang it. I did say maroon. I meant burgundy. That is absolutely Ron Burgundy. I blew that. Yes, that's my fault.
It's burgundy and gold, my friend. Burgundy and gold.
Burgundy and gold, yes. I had to have this talk with my son the other day. because my mom's family's all from Michigan. And
Yeah.
so he wanted a yellow, as he said, yellow Michigan hat. And I said, sir, it's maize. The Michigan fans hear you say yellow and blue instead of maize and blue. They will not treat you like a true Michigan fan. So I was like, make sure you're saying maize, son. And so that was my father advice, at least for that day. Hopefully I have a couple better nuggets for him throughout his life. And not just that one, but I think that one helps though. I think it helps.
That is a very important one. Kids got to learn. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I hear you. That's good parenting right there. I love it. All right. Summer's back. Welcome back, Summer. Appreciate the article. Link and answers. You're welcome. Why don't you give Gary a follow at IDP Sharks if you're not already. Curious if you're on Bale and Spectre this week, who we were just about to talk about, playing over Levante, David, or Nick Bolton. Been disappointed both lately with their tackle rates. Thanks again. Spectre looked good, didn't he?
Man, I was actually thinking about this. I wanted to ask you about this because I was looking. I was like, man, he looked pretty good. They don't really have anybody else. Are you buying him? Are you buying the Spectre play? Because I did see a couple fans of him from college, and they're like, oh, he's not that great. And I was like, they were kind of trashing him a little bit. And I was a little surprised. I love my boy Bolton, Nick Bolton. I know the stats aren't there right now. I know it's been a little ugly. It's very hard for me to sit him. He's my guy. I love him. So I can't sit him in good conscience in any of my leagues. I've liked Levante David, but I mean, Spectre's look solid. I could not personally start him over Bolton. What do you think? Would you start him over Levante David, or are you going, I got to have a little more out of him before he's getting the lineup start all the time?
I don't like Spectre in this matchup versus Jacksonville. I think Jacksonville is going to want to air it out against the secondary and kind of like utilize ETN and Bigsby, more so in the passing game, until they get within scoring range, which means within the 5 yards of the goal line. So I don't think this is the week for Spectre. I certainly wouldn't drop Nick Bolton. I'm with you. From his rookie year on, super high efficiency. He's been banged up, and it's been a slow burn so far this season. Levante David is now an interesting person because this guy, all he does is tackle, have 100 tackle seasons. There's a second-year player on this team who his snap percentage isn't there yet, but this dude is balling. And if you're using Fantasy Pros IDP scoring, let me bring up his metrics here. The past 2 weeks, he's had 10 solo tackles, 6 assisted tackles, and 1 sack. Fantasy Pro scoring 14 points week 1, 12 points week 2. And I just like his name, Pastor Servassier Dennis, if you get the ladies' man reference from Saturday Night Live. Servassier Dennis, I feel like, is somebody who's on the way up in Tampa Bay in terms of tackle numbers. He's eating into KJ Britt's time, and I think it's only a matter of time until he kind of usurps Levante, which is sacrilege. I get it, but to answer your question, no, I would stick with Bolton, to be honest with you. But I digress. That was my long-winded response there. Okay, let's go back here to another player. Now let's talk about a couple players for Thursday Night Football. Juwan Bentley out. He's out. He's not playing tomorrow for the Patriots when they take on the Jets. Is this the game? Is this the game all the Jelani Tavai truthers are getting tomorrow? Yes, people are going to say, "Well, his efficiency wasn't there." Like, I don't give a shit. Like,
sometimes if you're just on the field, you're gonna get some stats. Like, even if your efficiency isn't wonderful, if you're the guy that's on the field and there's no one really to replace you, they got to kind of leave you out there just to keep racking up stats. I like Tavai this week. I've got him in a couple leagues that go real deep IDP. It's very hard to get linebackers. I mean, very hard. People just stack linebacker on linebacker, and it's like you can't even get the backups unless you're on them early. So I played Tavai in this league pretty regularly. with fairly decent confidence, just because it's a deeper league. I'm all over him this week for sure. I think you got to play him. I think the Jets are going to run the ball. I think Brees is going to get touches. Braylon Allen looked pretty good last week. I had a couple of buddies who were like, God, I knew Braylon Allen would be good. And they were like, ah. And so I was like, I was like, man, I think the Jets are gonna pound the rock a little bit here and see what the Patriots have. Try to slow down a little Keon White. I like Tavai this week. I think he's in the mix. I do. I've not looked at the top tackle numbers this week for my betting show, but I'm gonna guess I'm gonna take the over tackles on Tavai this week.
And speaking of which, we have a betting show here at Fantasy Frames with the Stew with JT Brew with JT. JT, why don't you tell the good people when the NFL betting show will be taking place?
Yep, the NFL betting show. Join me usually on Thursday afternoons. I knock that one out. If you're into college football betting, Tuesday night show with me and my buddy Benny D. We do the college football betting show, but usually I put out the NFL one typically Thursday afternoons, unless something crazy comes with my schedule. Then I'll throw it in on a Wednesday or a Friday, but usually a Thursday afternoon show for the Stew with JT Brew NFL betting show. I'll do player props, games I like, all that good stuff. Feel free to jump in there. Tell me bets you like or ask me about certain bets you're thinking about.
Got a question here from Rugaru. He needs 3 out of Gregory Rousseau, Aiden Hutchinson, Myles Garrett, or Will Anderson. Who are you picking out of these 3? Which, by the way, embarrassment of riches.
I was just going to say, I was like, congratulations. I was like, that's freaking 4 awesome guys to have. I'm like, that's very nice for you, sir. I always love when you're having to figure out between the good players as opposed to be like, what garbage guy do I have to start this week? Because I got nobody else. Russo was my play week 1. I loved him. My boy came through for me, had just a nice game. The Jags have struggled a little bit protecting T-Law. I like him. I don't know how you could possibly sit Hutch right now. I don't care what the metrics are. The guy.
Oh, the metrics, good.
That's what I'm saying. The metrics are outstanding. But even if they weren't bad, like you got to just look at what he's doing. Like the stats, he's just freaking. I have 2 IDP leagues. He's leading the entire league in scoring, not IDP scoring, the entire freaking league in scoring. He has been such a beast. So for me, it comes down to Garrett and Will Anderson and what you like on those matchups. Browns against the Giants. Giants are not been good. Not been good at all. Or you've got Will Anderson against the Vikings, who've been surprisingly better than you thought. Who do you are you with me? Are you a Rousseau and a Hutch guy for sure? And then between those other guys, or do you have I'm probably going Rousseau, Hutch, Garrett this week. But what do you think, Jorge?
I'm going to go Rousseau, Hutch, and I think I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to go with Garrett here.
I have a hard time not playing anyone that's going against the Giants or the Panthers this year as far as D ends and outside linebacker rush ends. Those guys have just not done a good job protecting the QB. So those ones are tough for me.
Just to give you an idea, remember Cleveland Farrell, John Gruden's first-round draft pick for the Oakland Raiders back in the day?
Top 5 pick, if I do remember, out of Clemson, which everyone was real shocked about.
He was able to get 2 tackles and a sack last week versus the Giants. So just imagine what Myles Garrett can do to that.
Yes, so that's what I'm saying. If I can go get anybody that's going against the Giants or the Panthers, I'm typically going to play those guys.
Charlene with a question here in the chat. Need 2 IDP flex. Anzaloon, Alshire, Shaq Thompson, Judon, Dorian Williams, Dragon Elliott.
I wonder if she meant Deshawn Elliott there. It might be Deshawn Elliott for the Steelers. That might have been a autocorrect.
Which that's a hell of an autocorrect. Can you imagine? So actually, funny story. One of my coworkers, I was introducing myself when I first started at the place I'm at now. I was like, hey, how you doing? Nice to meet you, Jorge. And she's like, Dragon. I'm like, I guess I am dragging. I haven't had some coffee this morning. And she's like, no. My name, it's Dragon. And I'm like, okay, we'll go with it.
I thought she was going to give you the nickname Dragon. I thought this was like other guys. I was like Gator.
No, yeah.
That's what you were going with. I was like, Jorge, you should probably not have told me that story because I was like, I'm going to call you freaking Dragon forever if that's what what the case was. I was like, how could you not let me call you Dragon all the time? That's awesome. That's hilarious.
That would be. That's my IDP alias right there, Dragon Edwards. Wow. Okay. Anyhow, to answer your question, Charlene, I love Alshire. Dude's just a tackling beast. Now, this is where it gets tricky for me. I know the answer is Anzalone, and it's the first two. I know that's the answer to go with. But depending on whether or not your league gives you like 6 or 7 points for a sack, in terms. So basically, if they're big play scoring leagues, man, my boy Matt Judon finally.
Judon looked great last week. My always issue is the Chiefs. Man, Mahomes just seems to get away. He always seems to get away. It's like unless I know I just love a guy and I got to play him. If I have another option, I do, and I don't know if it's more mental for me, but I'm just like I feel like he always gets out of sight. You're like, he had him, and he just somehow gets away. So that one, 6 points per sack. I gotta love that. That's a good league. 6 points per sack. Love it. Man, that is tasty. God, that's tasty. Just gotta get home once. Just gotta get home once. Oh, I like whoever your commissioner is a stud. I love that 6 points per sack. That's freaking awesome. Man, that's a tough call.
Pull up something really quickly that may help.
Because you're playing the sack game there. I agree with you. It probably should be Anzalone and Alshire, but man, that does make it tasty. Judon looked good last week. I sat him in my league, and one of my leagues that I have him, just because I was like, I'm not going to play him until I really see kind of what he's doing with Atlanta. And then, of course, last week I was like, should have jumped on him sooner. Should have played him. Should have had him in the lineup.
So, looking at the numbers here, when looking at IDP points allowed, and I want to give a shout out to Ryan Seitzman, who does a great job of doing all the stat tracking over IDP Guru. In terms of linebackers, the Cardinals are in the bottom half of the league in allowing the most fantasy points to the linebacking position. And that is
who does?
Arizona. That's who the
okay. I believe it. I would believe it.
Now, in terms of the most point, in terms of defensive end, which is where Judon will probably fall into, assuming you're playing on sleeper, Charlene, the Kansas City Chiefs are also towards the bottom of fantasy points allowed. So I would almost say you could play either, but temper your expectations in terms of high volume output. But the sack thing, JT had it right. Like literally, one of the things about the sleeper app, if you're playing on sleeper, is that it compounds all the plays. So if you get a sack, well, that means you got a hit. It means you got a quarterback hit. It means you got a tackle. It means you got a tackle for loss, and it means you got a sack on top of that. So all those points just off of one play could really help boost you this week. So
yeah, I mean, a league like that, if you get one big sack play like that, I mean, you could get double digits on that play, just like that one play.
So I would be okay with either, to be honest with you.
I think that's just your risk reward, Charlene. I think it's your risk reward. If you want to go big play upside, I can see going Judon, like hoping you get a monster. Floor for me, I'm going to LBs just because. Usually those guys are going to get you guaranteed points.
Yeah, 100% agree. I hope that was helpful there. Getting back to the
I was going to say, Jorge, we got a couple people asking offensive questions in the chat. We're hammering out the IDP stuff, but if you do ask them, I am trying to answer some of the offensive trade questions in the chat. So if you're on the chat, feel free to keep throwing those in there. But on the show, we're probably going to talk more IDP questions there. But if you do have something you want to throw in there, I'll do my best to jump in and answer it.
See, folks, we got you covered. We got you covered here at Fantasy and Frames and on Shit the Gap. Nothing but love here. Speaking of love, we got to send some to Jermaine Johnson, who tore his Achilles on Sunday versus the Titans. IR rest of the year. Does old Will McDonald, whose farm is MetLife Stadium, interest you for fantasy purposes on this Jets defensive line going forward, JT?
Man, I've been trying to figure out these guys. The last couple of years, I got a decent amount of them in deeper leagues where I can kind of taxi guys. I got Jermaine Johnson, I got Will McDonald, got some of those guys. The Jets it's so hard to figure out what they want to do defensive end wise. I'm not sure I'm ready to
worry about. So
what'd you say? Well, yeah, it's one less. Yeah, you're right. It's one less guy to worry about. Man, I like McDonald. I liked him coming out of college. The fact that they spent high draft capital on him pushed him up my list when I did my rookie rankings when he came out. If I got a spot for him, I would pick him up. I mean, if you can, I'd take a shot. The guy has talent. I mean, you're not a first round pick without some talent. So if you got first round talent, I mean, eventually you want to give that guy a chance. This is the opening maybe he needs. Maybe this is what sets him off. I mean, obviously there's not a lot out there right now that tells you like, yes, this is the play. But maybe it's just the opportunity that he needed.
Just to give people some idea, last week, he only played in 53% of the snaps. And yet, for fantasy purposes, he got you 15 points off of 5 total tackles and 3 sacks. Now, granted, I would not anticipate that being the floor, but
probably going to be the high-end game of the year for him, most likely, but you're hoping he can get a little piece of that on a regular basis, if you're looking for the upside.
100% agree. Okay, Ruguru, you are getting ready to open up a can of worms between myself and JT because we differ on one of the players here. So first of all, pick 2, Kaden Ellis, Alex Highsmith, Harold Landry, Trenton Simpson. Let me go in reverse. Trenton Simpson, he's getting close to 100% snaps. The efficiency metrics aren't exactly at the elite level yet, but the opportunity is growing. I think the more opportunity he'll get, you'll start to see some bump in efficiency. But I don't think now is the time to start him in your lineup. Harold Landry is a man possessed who should be started in all leagues at defensive lineman. JT has a completely different take on that, which we will get into. I am not a fan of Alex Highsmith this week. So that leaves Kaden Ellis. So give me Kaden Ellis and Harold Landry. Who are you taking, Mr.
You're right. We do disagree a little bit there. See, I like Highsmith, but I know that he's about in every 1 out of 3 weeks that he shows up and gives you good points. So he was my pick last week for a sack. He got it. Loved it. This week for me, it's Ellison and Simpson. I think Simpson's working his way up. The stats haven't necessarily been there and been big yet as far as IDP production, but I like where he's headed. Like I said, I just think Ellis has a really nice floor. I just think he's going to get you solid points with an upside. He's a guy who can get you 12 tackles. He really can. I'm out on Landry this week. He's not been beating anyone really off the rush. He's been bull rushing some guys and making his way into place. My worry is I think the Packers continue to pound the rock. I think that hurts Landry and his pass rush opportunities. I'm not out on Landry as a player. I don't love him this week against the Packers. I love him more when he's a guy that can just pin his ears back and go the QB. If Jordan Love was in there this week, I think I would be higher on Landry. I just think the Packers are going to try to do exactly what they did last week against the Colts. They're going to pound the rock. They're going to, as much as they can, play ball possession against a team like the Titans that I think is going to struggle to move the ball in this defense. So I just don't think Landry's going to get a ton of opportunities. So that's why I'm out on Landry this week.
Fair point. Fair points. Ruguru has another question here. Montez Sweat or Will McDonald? I'm actually going McDonald here. Montez Sweat trying to wrangle Anthony Richardson. I just don't see it just yet.
I agree with you. And the Colts aren't going to drop back and just throw a bunch of times. So he's going to have a very limited amount of chances at sacks. So I agree with you. I'm going McDonald against the Pats.
All right, let's finish off here. You mentioned it earlier. I saved it for last.
They love Landry. Yeah, Jorge, you won this round. Charlene loves him. Rugaru loves him. I mean, they're like, Landry's my dude. So I know I'm on the bad side of that one. Jorge called it before we started. He's like,
no.
You might eat it a little bit on that take. I was like, I'll do it. I'll stay in my ground.
No. What'll happen next week is you'll actually be right, and then when they jump in the chat, it's like in your faces, respectfully, respectfully, of course. Respectfully speaking, I saved this last player to talk about last on the show sheet because I know you being a Colts fan, this one hurts. DeForest Buckner going on IR. Man, good God, does that suck?
God, it's so brutal, so brutal. And as I always tell people, I try to be completely forthcoming. I am a Colts season ticket holder. I have been for a long time. This team already has looked bad against the run. And in DeForest Buckner's career with the Colts, whenever he does not play, they have been absolutely horrid against the run. So you take a team that's already bad this year, and then they're really bad when he doesn't play. Man, DeAndre Swift might be a play this week. Man, it's going to be ugly. I got a huge group of friends all going to the game. Almost all my friends are Bears fans. We're going to the game on Sunday. It's going to be real interesting. I was like, guys, hopefully we see a lot more offense if these defenses are going to be bad, even though I like the Bears defense. It's going to be interesting, though. But, man, DeForest Buckner going down is just rough. I just think he changes the game at defensive tackle more than almost any player in the league outside of when Aaron Donald played. He is just such a game changer. The whole defense adjusts to him. He just wreaks havoc from inside. The Colts are just not the same team without him. They've got some guys I like, but they're not DeForest Buckner, and they're not going to be able to be DeForest Buckner.
No, 100%. For those who are asking the offensive questions,
again, I'll jump in the chat. And I'll try to answer as many offensive questions as I can.
They're not offensive questions; they're offensive questions. But you get what I'm saying. JT will get to those in the chat. Yeah, this is a tricky one. And in terms of like who's going to step up here, look, Liatu Latu was my guy for the sack clutch segment last week because I just thought he was going to have a great opportunity. We work into the rotation a little bit more. That has not been the case. He left the game with, I believe it was like a shoulder injury. Don't quote me on that, but he left the game due to injury. Just sucks. This is becoming for IDP purposes when we were talking about in the preseason. Man, the Colts are loaded for IDP stars. And now it's like they're loaded at linebacker and defensive back now. And it's slowly like working its way back to the back of the field. And I'm just like, just stop. Whatever bad.
Well, and it crushes the DNs, right? Like you're like, oh, okay, you're gonna get Grover, you're gonna get Buck coming up the middle, and it's gonna help these DNs. And now you're like, man, now they're gonna have to run, which is they're not good at. They're gonna have to run, like stop the run, which is not who they drafted. Those guys are pass rushers. It's starting to stack up ugly on the Colts defense. It's getting ugly. I'm already, after watching last week's game, I'm like mentally preparing myself for what we're gonna get most of the season there in Indianapolis.
So got some awesome news right now. Thanks to you all watching. And wow, we are at 49 minutes and we have barely scratched the surface. This is going to be a long show.
I was going to say, Jorge, I hope you didn't have any late night plans because we're still in segment 1.
Yep.
45 minutes in this sucker. So
we're about to get to segment 2, but we've already gained 2 subscribers to this show. We are 8 away from 1,200. For those who are watching,
get us there, people. Come on, help us out.
Get us there. We would really appreciate it. All right, let's get into some Money Mirage. All right. So the premise of this is very simple. We're going to talk about a performance or a trend in performances of a player, and we're going to tell you, is this money? Is this legit? Or is it a mirage? And, don't drink the Kool-Aid there, or don't buy the dip. What does that mean, by the way, buy the dip? Or what is dip?
You know what? That's interesting because
Oh,
I always
so,
like those old school like sayings, and then you figure out where they came from, and you're like, that's like nothing what I thought it would be.
huh.
They used to have a show on Comedy Central that they would do that. I think was Nick Cage in that show. I don't. He hosts on. It was ridiculous, but he would go through all these old sayings and where they came from. I love that. I'm not sure what "buy the dip" means. I used to always say "close but no cigar." I was just thought that was a cool like saying.
Yeah.
And then I found out was like, oh, there used to be bar games where if you put money in and you won, it was like gambling. You won it, you would win a cigar. And if you lost, they're like, oh, close, but no cigar because you didn't win the cigar. I'm like, love it. I'm not sure what buy the dip is. And now that is on my list of things I need to research.
Ruguru with his last one for his lineup. Need two. Well, Blackman may not even play. So that's if you have Nick Cross, I would start him. Cameron Curl, not a fan of Cameron Curl, so give me Branch and Metellus for the answer to your question here. So let's get into our first question for Money Mirage. Dennis Gardeck, I was watching Red Zone, and god damn, this dude, this guy put up some serious numbers. He had 3 sacks last week. He was, in terms of Fantasy Pros IDP scoring, the LB5 and the defensive lineman 6 for this. Excuse me. Let me go back here. For the season, after last week's performance, he is the LB5 overall and DL6 overall, averaging 17.5 points per game. Based on his performances in week 1 and week 2, is it money that he should be in your starting lineup, or is it mirage and therefore you should make sure he's out of your starting lineup?
For me, I don't know if it's just me. I feel like Arizona is this team. I feel like there's always 1 or 2 defensive guys that have like 1 or 2 really good weeks, and you're like, oh wait, should I be getting on that guy? And it's a mirage. I feel like it's always a mirage. I always feel like they have like a good week here or there, and they kind of jump up your list, and you're like, oh, is that guy going to be like legit? And then they're not. So for me right now, until I see more, it's a mirage. I tell you who I really was hoping would be in this mix right now and hasn't been, and that's DeMarcus Robinson, the rookie out of Missouri. I really wanted to see him on this defense. He's been out on IR. I thought that this could be a prime spot for him. And we haven't got to see him hit the field yet for the Cardinals. But for me right now, I'm still on the mirage. I've just seen it too many times in Arizona where the defense is not great and somehow guys pop up, have a really good week here or there, but you just don't see it the rest of the year consistently.
Yeah, you go back to his week 1 performance. In terms of win rate and pressure rate, both zeros. You go to last week, 33 win rate, 26 pressure rate. I mean, come on, man.
Awesome.
Sure. I mean, yeah, it's great. Like the guy, like I said, he balled out. He put up massive numbers for your fantasy team, but not somebody that I am investing in. Like you just said, show me more consistently. And he's not even somebody I would like tag or bookmark in my app. I think you could do better than that, folks. And if you don't, reach out to either JT or myself on X, and we'll answer all your questions there, or drop them in the chat. So he has a mirage for both of us. All right, next one. Keon White has been playing like a man possessed at the edge position. He is currently ranked as the DL4 in fantasy points per game, averaging 19.8. Here is now a bold Money and Mirage question. And I know it's super early to ask, but I'm going to ask it anyhow.
Hey, but that's what we do, right? We get bold.
Put ourselves out there and wrong so we can get slammed later. Yes, exactly. That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing. Bold money mirage. Keon White will end the season averaging more points per game than the former edge rusher for the Pats, Matt Judon.
That's spicy. That's
People in the chat
spicy.
take on this. Let us know who you think, Judon or White.
Oh, I like that's a good question, man. I could that one's gonna be close. Do you want me then, or is that for the listeners, or do you want me to answer?
I want people in the chat to give us their opinion. Keon White or Matt Judon, who will end up the end of the season more points per game, Fantasy Pro scoring. What do you think? Or any scoring?
You know what? Hey, you know what you need to do after the show? We're gonna put a poll on the YouTube and the Twitter on that. We're gonna throw a poll up on that so you guys can jump in and vote. I want to see the votes on that because I think that's gonna be awfully close, especially after what Judon did last week. I tell you what, I think Keon White's the real deal. I really do. I liked him coming out of Georgia Tech, but you know how it is with the Pats. Sometimes it takes a little while to work these guys in the system, get them to figure out what they want to do. He was one of my big buys in the offseason. I just thought, man, this guy is going for nothing now, averaging nothing as a rookie. I picked him up on waivers all over the place. I just thought, man, Judon being gone. I also, and we talked about this pre-show, Jorge, I played a lot of start defensive tackle leagues where you got to play D tackle and DNs on my fantasy league. And he qualifies as a D tackle in my fantasy league. And that just bounced in my eyes. I was like, oh, because he plays inside in the 3-4. So technically he's a DN, but he plays inside in a 3-4, kind of like Cam Hayward does for the Steelers. I'm like, that's a buy. So I've got Cam Hayward on that team as well. And I was like, oh, Keon White could be a Cam Hayward type of player. I was like, we need to pick him up. So I actually probably bid way more than anyone else was willing to bid on him free agency this summer. But I was like, dude, this guy could be a stud. And the fact that he's a defensive tackle, I love it. He's proving you can play him as a D lineman. You don't have to just play him as a D tackle. If you're in a D line start league, he's playable. I really like him. I think this guy's got a motor. I think he's going to end up, if things go right, I think he's going to have a good career. I think he's going to have a really nice year this year. I'm all in on Keon White. And I told you before, I had him in a change of my lineup this week. I went to put him in. I went to play two defensive tackles, which I almost never do unless it's like a super premium defensive tackle league. I went to put him in, and I think I just got crazy. Like I said, had people watching games. I don't think I hit save. Didn't play him this week. Was pretty ticked about it. I had a safety in instead. It cost me, but I like Keon White moving forward, man. I just think he's the real deal. I think he is absolutely money.
I love how you danced around the whole, will he have more fantasy points per game?
I do think he will.
Okay,
that was my long-winded on a show that's already taking way too long. That's my long-winded, yes, I am going to say, you're like, JT, yes or no answer. That's it. Don't freaking say anything else. Yes, he is going to outscore Judon this year.
Yeah, I mean, you go, from win rate of 16%, pressure rate of 12% in week 1, week 2, 26% win rate, maintaining the 16% pressure rate. Like, Mirage. Yeah. Say Mirage.
You're going to say Mirage? Say oh.
I refuse to count out my guy, Matt Judon, just yet. New team. I get it. I don't care. I'm going to say Mirage. We're going to have you know what?
I've got Judon on that same team with Keon White, so I'm loving both. I'm just going to play both of them every week, and we'll have to see.
I mean, that's obviously the way to go. But you know what? We do this on Fantasy and Frames programming quite often, folks. And you're going to be inducted into this for the first time, JT, since it's your first year here at Fantasy and Frames. We are going to come back to this at the end of season show, okay? And
mark it down, write it down, put it in the book.
I got it. Right. Because when we figure out who is the winner and who is the loser, we are going to have.
Okay.
Loser takes pie right to the face. live on the show.
I can't even tell you how much my girlfriend or her daughter would love to throw a pie in my face on the show. I think it would make their whole freaking year if I told them they got to do that.
Well, that's what you get for not putting enough faith in Matt Judon. Rougarou says, we live IDP, so we're here for it all night long. That's what I want to hear. Fantastic. All right, last question for Money and Mirage. And this one hurts, but it doesn't hurt, but it hurts, but it doesn't hurt. And I'm a Commanders fan, and therefore, by prefacing that, you'll get where I'm going with this. In week 1, Chase Young was second on the team for the Saints at edge in defensive snaps. He had a pressure rate of 19.2%, which is borderline elite. He had a win rate, meaning he beat his offensive lineman blockers at a rate of 23.1%, which is in the elite range. Statistically, box score wise, nothing. In week 2, he still had double digits in pressure rate and win rate. He had 4 total tackles. He had half a sack. So, box score being filled. Fantasy point wise, in terms of IDP scoring for Fantasy Pros, he had like 4.3 points or 3.3 points. So nothing substantial yet. Money and Mirage, Chase Young will be the person. How do I phrase this? Rostering Chase Young now is a smart decision before he breaks out. Is that a money take or a Mirage take?
For me, this is interesting because we all know Chase has been a little bit disappointing, to say the least, especially where he was drafted. I think he might actually be in a good spot here. He's on a 1-year deal, correct? With the Saints? So. I'm pretty sure he's on a 1-year deal. If Chase Young's ever going to ball out, this is going to be the year. The contract year on a pretty good Saints defense, as we've seen the first couple of weeks of the year. Can they keep this up all year? I don't know. But I came into the year and I said, I think this Saints team is sneaky good just because I don't love that division. And I thought their defense, I know everybody was real big on Atlanta, but I thought their defense was good enough to be the best defense in the division. So I was on them there. I'm actually going to buy this, and I'm actually surprised that I'm saying I buy him. I am going to say he's a money. I'm going to say Chase is money here. I think he's ready to turn it up this year. He knows that if he doesn't turn it on this year, that money goes bye-bye. Contract year, we talk about it in sports. Those guys know it. They know it's a contract year. Time to ball out, Chase. If you can go get him, I'm going to get him right now. People forgot about him, left him for dead. He's fine. He's got a good defense around him. It all comes down to injuries for him. He's been a super injury-prone guy. If he can stay healthy, I think this is a pretty good defense. I think the IDP stats will eventually start coming from him. The rates are what you want to see here early on. I'm buying him. I'm money for me on Chase Young, and this might be the only year, but I'm on him this year for sure.
Nope, can't do it, Mirage. And there is no like statistical evidence. There is no I watched game film. It's just nothing but hate.
Sometimes that hate just burns inside. I know how it is. I've been there before.
But I will say objectively, if the efficiency stays there and his snap percentages get higher, it's going to be kind of hard to ignore. But that being said, okay, well, let's get into some plays and fades, JT. All right, we're going to give you at defensive lineman, at linebacker, and defensive back. Each of us are going to give you our play of the week and fade of the week. JT, why don't you kick us off here at defensive lineman? Who is your play? Then who is your fade and why?
All right, just before I jump into those, I want to shout out you for those wipes. Those are great. Like you were killing it on some of those.
So I let me give credit where credit is due. We had a guy be a producer here last year named Gator J.
Gator. I know Gator J.
Yeah, Gator. Yeah. he made a ton of these, videos and montages.
Yeah, we used to call them wipes when I was in the
Wipes.
TV business. Yeah,
Yeah.
like and when I was in like sports news and all, we call them wipes. Yeah, they freaking nice. I like it. So I just
Yeah.
wanted to say that. Get back to my old school TV days back in the day.
No, he deserves all the credit. He, to see, when he first started making video content and graphics content to seeing where it is now and the stuff he made here, will always be appreciative of all the hard work he did here at Fantasy and Frames. So, yeah, give the props are his. But anyhow, back to the defensive lineman. Who's your play? Who's your fade, and why?
So I talked about him already. So I went on a huge rant. So I'm not going to get heavy into it again. My play is Keon White. I'm riding this train until the wheels fall off. I think Keon White every week as a play. I like everything he's doing there. I just said it all before. My fade right now, and again, I just haven't seen enough, is Pat Jones, defensive lineman, Minnesota Vikings. Right now, I think he's tied for second in the NFL with sacks with 4, but that's basically all he's got this year. He's got those sacks, and that's it. Nice start. I'm not sure if he can maintain that. Right now, the metrics for him are not great. He's put up some stats, and we, like I said, metrics and stats, it matters both ways. He's got right now a 9.5% pass rush win rate, which is like solid. It's not terrible by any means. If you look at his PFF grade right now for defensive linemen, pass rush grade just alone is 59.5. It's 141st among defensive linemen. So they do not love what he's shown pass rushing, even though he has 4 sacks. I'm just not buying him yet. So Pat Jones, I just wouldn't go out there. If you can pick him up for cheap, go ahead and see what happens in Minnesota. But I'm not going out there and just spending a ton of fab on him and picking him up just yet.
Is it just me, or you hear his name, and every time you hear his name, you just want to yell out, Pat Jones? Is that just me? Okay. Anyhow, we got Robert Thomas.
You know what? That made me think of was the rapper Mike Jones. Mike Jones.
Exactly. That's where I was going with it. Yeah, thank you. We got Rob Thomas in the chat, as in Matchbox 20. Rob Thomas.
I was gonna say the Rob Thomas. I love it. Wait, we're just gonna pretend. Yeah.
Well, even if it's not, you are the Rob Thomas to us, Robert Thomas.
You're our Robert Thomas, and that's all that matters.
Damn right. And if you want more compliments, hit that subscribe button over on the YouTube channel and help us get to 1,200 subscribers. He said it's not Matchbox 20, Rob Thomas. Okay, I'm sorry. All right, so my plays and fade at defensive lineman. My play this week, Boye Mafe, Seattle Seahawks edge rusher, left edge rusher. Total pressures 15 on the season. Turns that into 2 sacks, 2 quarterback hits. Going up against Austin Jackson of the Miami Dolphins, who has allowed the most pressures amongst the 2 tackles here for the Miami Dolphins with 8, and has given up 2 sacks. This, I think, man, I feel sorry for a number of people within the Dolphins organization, from a health standpoint to a fantasy standpoint. I just see the wheels falling off, man. I think it's going to start this week. Good defensive pass rush versus a offense that's in shambles. No disrespect to Skylar Thompson, but a little. I don't see him getting past Boye Mafe when he has him in his grasp. So that's where I'm going with that. Alex Highsmith is my fade. I generally try and stay away from people who are taking on Rashawn Slater, the Los Angeles Chargers. I hear he's pretty good and doesn't really allow a lot of pressures or sacks. And so, yeah, that's kind of
like I said, my gut pick last week, I told you, was Alex Highsmith. They would get a sack. Just straight gut feeling, and I'm 100% with you on a fade this week. I don't like him at all this week. He is such a guy, you either taking him all in one week or you're out on him because he's so inconsistent. So I'm totally with you on that.
All right, let's get to our linebackers. Who are your plays and
Before
fades?
we have to play this, I have to put this because this is just clear cut one of the best quotes.
So
Why
Robert
should I
Thomas
have to change my name? I'm not the one who sucks.
I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with you.
Great Office Space reference there, Robert Thomas. I love everything you're doing with that reference. That's absolutely amazing. No talent ass clown, as they like to say in Office Space. Like I said, we love to have the late show. We can say whatever we want. Thank you for that. That absolutely made my night, made me laugh hard. Good quote.
Got Captain joking here. Huge fan of the show. Thank you. Already said thank you. Hey, Robert Thomas, have you hit that subscribe button yet?
Do it.
I traded Xavier Worthy and Flowers for Bowers. Wow, that rhymed. I know I'm pretty bull. I just think there's a new king in town. You're right. You're absolutely right. You have Kyle Pitts. Again, it depends on who your receivers are, obviously, right? But the fact I'm going to trust you, don't betray this trust, but I'm going to trust you that the fact that you're giving up Xavier Worthy and Zay Flowers, that you're pretty stacked at the wide receiver position, which is the only reason why you would give them away for somebody who I agree with you is going to be the quote unquote generational talent at the tight end position in Brock Bowers.
Especially if this is a tight end premium league or like a start 2 tight end league, I absolutely am with you on that. I love Bowers. We got our guy Rich, Mr. Gingerbeard just talked about it at 465 Dynasty earlier tonight on Fancy and Frames. He loves Pitts. So he's got Pitts. I know you don't. You got the disgusting. Like you don't love Pitts. He's still in on Pitts. I love Bowers. I'm a huge Bowers guy. I think going to the moon with him eventually, especially if the Raiders can figure out QB, their offense. I like Bowers.
We can't see the emoji that Robert Thomas put in the chat, but we did gain a subscriber, so I'm going to assume that's you, Rob Thomas.
He gave us the salute. Thank you, Robert Thomas.
All right,
we appreciate you, sir.
All right, let's get back to linebackers. Who's your play? Who's your favorite linebacker here, JT?
I was just talking about the Raiders. Spillane.
Oh, yeah.
Like Robert Spillane. I tell you what, me and my cousin Kirk, big Steelers fans, we both were like not super happy when they let Robert Spillane go. We're like, this guy just seems to get it. He's tough. They mostly played him on special teams. He has been fantastic since he went to the Raiders. So far this year, he's got 20 tackles and a pick. Top 12 in a run defense grade on PFF 79-1. He knows how to go gets run inside off the ball linebackers right now. Second best pass rush grade out of spin lane. So he's a guy. He's going to get you tackles against the run, but he also can make you some splash plays here and there. I like him. The Raiders, they got some fight in them. They got a little fight in them. And I actually really like him this week against the Panthers. I mean, they're starting Andy Dalton. Ugh. The red rifle is the old red rifle. That's got a little bit of, it's been sitting out in the rain just a tad. It's starting to rust a little. Just not the guy he used to be when he was slinging it for the Bengals and they were making the playoffs. I think they're going to try to run the ball as much as possible. They've got to figure out a way to protect the football with him starting Bryce Young. I think this plays right into Spillane getting a bunch of tackles, and I love them being aggressive. Blitzing Spillane, I think he gets a sack in this game, and heck, I could see him getting a pick in this game. I think a big Robert Spillane game. I just love him against the Panthers this week.
Now, who's your fade?
Who's my fade? My fade this week is Jerome Baker for the Seattle Seahawks. Baker's a guy, I just find myself with him on a ton of teams, and I just feel like I can never trust him. I just don't know what I'm going to get out of him. He has not been great against the run so far. 3.6% stop percentage against run plays. I mean, he's bottom 20% for off-ball linebackers in the league. He just does not come up and fill the hole like he used to. Dolphins, we know, are going to try to run the ball without Tua. Here's my issue. Skylar Thompson, I don't think Miami does much in this game. I think Seattle controls this game. I don't think the defense for Seattle is on the field a lot. I think taking away opportunities for Baker's against the run. So you think, all right, he can play the run and get a lot of tackles. I just don't see that happening. I think Seattle ends up pretty much dominating this one, and Dolphins are going to slow it way down. They want as few plays in this game as possible. I think that works against Baker this week. So I'm out on Jerome Baker for the Seahawks this week.
Rigger asks, if you're out on Baker, how do you feel about Dotson?
I do like Dotson better than Baker. So I will go. I will go be there. If you have Dotson for me is playable. I don't see it with Baker this week. Dotson's going to be a little more active in the pass game. Baker's not really known for his pass coverage, and I just don't see it this week. He's the guy I'm out on. If you're going to play some other guys, like you said, you're playing Mafe. I like Mafe. I like Dotson. I like Witherspoon. There are Seattle guys I like. I think Baker's the odd man out this week if you're playing Seattle defenders.
100% agree. Okay, and let's get to my play and fade at the linebacker position. Cowboys are going against the Baltimore Ravens. According to IDP guru himself, Ryan Seitzman, who tracks all this information and data, so shout out to him and his website. The Baltimore Ravens are allowed the 5th most fantasy points to the linebacker position. I'm not going to say it's Eric Kendricks this week. I'm going to say it's DeMarvion Overshown. I understand. Kendricks plays 95% of snaps, has a tackle efficiency of 12%. Overshown only plays 30, but has a tackle efficiency of 27.8%. I don't think Dallas can ignore just how good this guy is. He's clearly, better than Damone Clark, Morris Liafau, and Nick Vigil. I didn't realize Nick Vigil was in the league still. So that tells you all you need to know about Nick Vigil. So I see Overshown and his athleticism being put to the test here against Baltimore, which they're going to make you go across the field, sideline to sideline, end zone to end zone. And Overshown has that athletic ability. Don't forget, folks, he is a former safety converted linebacker. So this guy has the range. He has the speed. He can go sideline to sideline. He can go after Lamar. He can go after, he can help assist with assisted tackles on Derrick Henry. This guy can do it all, folks. He really is the real deal. Had a great week 1, quieter week 2, but this week, I think you're going to see him really outperform what people are projecting him to be, just because he is the definitive LB2 for this team, despite the snap numbers. Don't get it twisted. The fade, man, every year I try and fade him. And I'm like, nope, he still puts up numbers, super inefficient. I mean, he's very efficient, but his missed tackle rate is super high. So it's like, man, you're giving me plenty of reasons to bench you. But sometimes in fantasy football, specifically in IDP fantasy football, players that are not good in real football actually make for some of the best IDP fantasy football people. And if you want a lesson on that, just we'll cover that in another show, another time, or hit us up and we'll explain it to you over here on the Twitter or X machine. It's Cody Barton. Cody Barton, I'm sorry, sir. I've held on to you in many a Dynasty League. I can't do it. I can't do it anymore. I just can't do it. He played 71% of snaps. He had a tackle efficiency of 14.9 in week 2, or excuse me, in week 2. But it hasn't translated into tackle numbers or high enough tackle numbers that you can actually say, I want to start Cody Barton. Sorry, Cody. I'm just not.
I'll jump in there real quick. I agree with you. I thought Barton was kind of like a sneaky steal last year. I thought you could get a good value on him. I thought people kind of overlooking him. I agree with you. I'm out on Barton. Everything I kind of was positive about him, everything I was seeing, I don't like this year. I think you're right. Overshown, dude, his being a former safety is showing up in pass coverage. He is an elite pass coverage guy out of that linebacker spot. And I tell you what, with more of the rushing quarterbacks, especially like Lamar, having like a linebacker that is as quick and as fast as him, I think it says a lot. I think Overshown is just going to get better and better. I mean, he's a guy still kind of learning a new position, but I've loved the athleticism I've seen out of him. So I love both those calls.
We got a question here from David Tan. David, can you hit that subscribe button since you're here on YouTube already? We'd really appreciate it. We are 7 away from reaching 1,200 subscribers. We'd really appreciate that. His question is, how do you guys feel about Jared Verse? Jared Verse kicks ass. He's fantastic. If you got him in your rookie drafts, you're happy. If he's on your waiver wire, you're going to be even happier because nobody else has got him. You're going to be the one who go gets him. If you just miss out on him, I can understand why you're a little upset and or a little bit sad. But it's okay. That's why we're here. That's why we put
Jorge, we were discussing. We got a segment later in the show. We were discussing whether Jared Verse was going to be our pick of the week. So we like Jared Verse. Yeah. A little tough matchup this week. We'll bring it up here at the end of the show. But Jared Verse is a dude. He's a guy. I like Jared Verse, man.
So definitely we'll get to him later. But this week is kind of an interesting week. So in other words, David Tan, stick around. And if you have more questions, just drop them in the chat. We'll be happy to answer them. We got 2K Plays 17. What's up? What's up with you? You having a good
welcome to the show? Thanks for hanging.
Yeah, no, seriously, thank you. Even if it's just for the company, we appreciate it. Let's get to our fades and plays at defensive back. Who do you got here, JT?
I was trying to look who had it earlier in the show. Someone was asking about a guy that was on my list. Here it is. Here it is. I found him. Rougarou, Latte Taylor to the moon for the Saints. He's got him. Check out my article, Fades and Plays on Fantasy and Frames. Go to fantasyandframes.com. I've got him. Tomorrow. It'll be in there tomorrow. So, yeah, check it out in the morning. You'll check it out. You'll see it. He's on my list. I like what they're doing. I'll tell you why I like what they're doing. I picked a different guy to bring up tonight. So, I'm breaking the rules, giving you more than one of the guys in my article. So I do love Olave. So I like that point. I am absolutely loving Deshawn Elliott for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm loving the way he's playing. I was a big Steelers inside Justin Simmons guy in the offseason. They went out and get Deshaun Elliott, and you know what? Real pumped about it. He has been a great duo going next to Mika Fitzpatrick. He has filled in phenomenally since coming over for the Chargers, coming over from the Dolphins. He's going against the Chargers this week. Right now, PFF grades right now, they have him the fourth best ranked safety in the league right now. He has 13 tackles, 2 pass breakups, an interception. Love utility where they're putting him. 25 box snaps, 41 slot corner snaps, which I think is really interesting because the Steelers haven't really settled in on a slot corner yet. They've kind of been moving guys around. They've been trying some different guys. So getting him in that for 41 slot corner snaps, I think is real interesting. That means that they kind of like DeMonte Casey to kind of maybe slide in at safety sometimes, and that moves Elliott up. So I like that. I like the fact that he's already got, 66 snaps in the box. He's played 22 at free safety, where it means he's dropping deep safety. Don't want to see him in those deep safety very often, but I think he's made up for it. The fact that they run on the line, we've obviously seen the Steelers team is going to move guys around, keep offenses guessing. Third best run defense among all safeties right now, fourth best pass grade. I mean, you can't get much better than that. Guy has been stellar against the run, stellar against the pass. He fits the Steelers team, which I think is a top 5 overall defense. I think he fits perfectly. He's a guy that people like, maybe they had him, maybe they didn't on their lineups. If he's out on your waiver wire, absolutely go snag him immediately. He's a guy you can start every week. I'm loving what Elliott's bringing for the Steelers.
And then your fade.
And my fave for this week, my fave for this week, a guy that I just feel like is slipping. It hasn't totally happened yet, but I do not like what I've seen in the first 2 weeks, and that's C.J. Gardner-Johnson for the Eagles. We kind of saw he went to the Lions, got hurt, came back to the Eagles, where he was known, where he played really well. He's at the Saints this week. The Saints have looked phenomenal so far on offense and defense. Gardner-Johnson, he's not bad yet, but it's starting to look worse week to week. If he's a guy I'm starting every week in IDP, I'm going to be a little nervous, and I'm going to start looking as possible backups for him. So he's played 45% of his snaps at the slot cornerback or in box safety. So, decent share. They're not as high as we'd like, but decent. He's only got 11 total tackles this year. Right now, as safeties are ranked, according to PFF against the run, he's dead last. 67 out of 67 safeties. Ugh. You need your safeties that are playing in the box to come up and make tackles, especially against the run. He's been terrible against it. He has shown a propensity to get beat deep and not make tackles on deep plays, as he showed on that touchdown Monday night against Mooney in the Falcons. Just a play he kind of gave up on. And the Eagles have drafted a lot of young guys. I could see him losing snap share in time as the season progresses if he keeps this up. He's on my watch list. I'm nervous about CJ Gardner. I'm sitting him this week, but I'm nervous long-term on CJ Gardner-Johnson.
Before we get to the plays and fades for defensive back for me, let's answer some of these questions we got in the chat here, because we got some parts of the show. First of all, ladies first. Angie, what's up, Angie? Welcome to Shoot the Gap. Glad you're here.
I actually know a girl named Angie Hatfield. I don't think it's you, but I went to college with a girl named Angie Hatfield. That's crazy.
Wouldn't it be funny if it actually was the same Angie? How about that? You never know. Small world, right?
That's right.
Good evening, guys. Which one of these would you sit this week? Will Anderson, Josh Hines Allen, or Will McDonald? Thank you. No, thank you for tuning in. Am I going to be the ballsy one and say sit Will Anderson because it's still Daniil Hunter's show, and Josh Hines Allen and Will McDonald have the coolest?
I kind of have to agree with you. I love Will Anderson, but I kind of think you play Hines Allen and McDonald this week. I agree with you, Jorge.
She says, "Where did you go to college?"
University of Missouri, and that's with the girl I went named Angie Hatfield went to Mizzou. So.
Okay, we got a question here from David Tan, which, by the way, just want to say we are at now 1,194 subscribers on YouTube. Please, we are 6 away. If you are not subscribed to us, please do so. We hope you've been enjoying the content we've been providing for you all week long. And tonight, starting with Dynasty 365, our Fourth and Frame show, and now here on Shoot the Gap, David asks here, what do you make of the lack of production of Derwin James? Drafted him as my DB1, but I'm concerned, rightfully so. I also have Nick Cross and Tyler Newman, but I feel I need to make another pickup. So here's my thought process when it comes to like where I drafted somebody and where I value them during the season. Honestly, where you draft somebody stops mattering after week 1, week 2. Like now's the time where like draft capital, that notion doesn't mean a goddamn thing. Because at the end of the day, I don't want a projected DB1. I want the people who are actually DB1s, are putting up DB1 numbers. Julian Blackmon is out, or at least he's questionable. I should say he's out, but he's
shoulder injury has me real nervous. I don't think he's going to play this week.
So you have another good week for Nick Cross, right? Theoretically. Tyler Newman averaging 7.2 points per game using Fantasy Pros IDP scoring. look, once he gets all that opportunity in New York, he is going to be something special.
Love Newman.
I do agree.
Was my rookie safety one coming into the draft.
And while I'm answering some of these questions, JT, can you hit some of these offensive questions?
Yes, I absolutely will.
Not offensive questions. I obviously you're not dropping Derwin James because he's going to have his elite weeks more often than not. It's early. We're only 2 weeks into the season. Don't freak out. Don't freak out. This is not a situation where you want to just get rid of him. But, go through your waiver wire. Look up consistency. You don't want to get the player who week 1 had 6 points and then week 2 had 30. You know what I mean? And I'm just using that as an example. But you'd rather have the people who would get you 12 and 12, 11 and 11, or double digit, because that is a good start to trying to figure out value in the fantasy football IDP leagues there. So yeah, pick somebody up. Hit me up on X at Jorge B. Edwards. Show me your roster, waiver wire of options, and I'd be happy to go over that with you and help you solidify your defensive back position. Let's see here. Rob Thomas, welcome. He says, I don't play IDP, but I think I'm going to stick around to break up all the offensive noise and get the defensive side of the ball. Good. There you go. Love it. We got 2K play 17. I just realized this is IDP, but I was wondering what do you guys think about Zach Moss and this Bengals offense moving forward. Stay in the chat. JT will have you covered while I talk about my plays and fades at the defensive back.
Yeah, but I'm getting to them right now. People, just keep an eye on the chat. I'm answering your questions. I'm going down the list here.
All right, so my play this week, and this is an abnormal play because generally we like to play people for IDP at defensive back who are actually crowding the line of scrimmage or box safeties, formerly always referenced as strong safeties, which is an outdated term. Or we like to play cornerbacks that both play, a decent percentage at close to the line of scrimmage, or play in the slot cornerback role. This guy is neither, and this hurts because I'm a Commanders fan. Benjamin St-Juste leads the Commanders in being targeted by opposing quarterbacks with 18 targets. The next defensive back has 9. So that is pretty crazy. He allows a reception percentage of 61% of the time. He allows an NFL quarterback rating of 118. He's allowed 2 touchdowns on the season. Sounds like a pretty tempting player to be targeting if you're an offensive coordinator and or a quarterback. And what does that lead to? Pass breakups. And pass breakups are something that people should not just, ignore when they're looking at their fantasy points. Pass breakups, those add up. And if you look here, you're using Fantasy Pros IDP scoring. He is tied for second in the NFL in pass breakups with 4. He has on the season 11 solo tackles, none assisted, solo, which means more fantasy points. And on the season in fantasy points per game, he is the DB 18, averaging 13.3. What does this mean? This means that this guy is getting peppered with targets. He's not going away in terms of having another person come in and take his job just yet. And this week he's going against the Jamar Chase, this week in the passing offense of the Cincinnati Bengals. This dude's going to get targeted a lot. He'll get some tackles. He'll get some pass breakups. He may not be great for a real football standpoint, but by God, for IDP, he'll be just fine. So he is my play of the week. And then my fade, Quentin Lake is doing really, really good for the Los Angeles Rams, what does that do for Cameron Curl? I think they're both going in opposite directions. Did I do that right? Opposite directions. There we go. I did that right. You look at Cameron Curl's box snap percentage. Obviously, it leads all the safeties in the NFL on the Rams, with 31.8%. But Quentin Lakes was at 27.3%. You're seeing, a lot more tackles being had by Quentin Lake. Just there was a time where we thought Cameron Kitchens was going to outproduce Cameron Curl in the preseason. Like, something is off with Cameron Curl, has been for a couple of years. Quentin Lake is starting to come on strong. If you head over to fantasyandframes.com and read Gary Davenport, aka the Godfather of IDP, at IDP Sharks on Twitter, he put it in his IDP waiver wire article, which you can find every week at fantasyandframes.com. Quentin Lake is the guy you want to pick up on waivers if he's still available, and somebody who you want to have for this matchup and on your roster going forward, just because we're seeing the changing of the guard there in Los Angeles for him over Cameron Curl. So I'm fading Cameron Curl. I'm not saying sit Cameron Curl. Obviously, we call these plays and fades, folks. It means we're fading our expectations or we're playing up to them. To say start or sit, I think it does you a disservice. People who put out start and sit articles, it does you a disservice because, if I say, sit, sit Devonta Smith, because he has a bad matchup, but you're just like, okay, well, I sat Devonta Smith, but I put in Wan'Dale Robinson. Those are your only options. Like, no, don't sit Devonta Smith. Like, you're playing him. It doesn't give me it doesn't give you any context of how that can help your roster, which is why we do plays and fades versus starts and sits. But anyhow, that takes us through our IDP plays and fades, which means we have one more segment to get to. All right, JT, sack lunch people, you know the rules if you've been watching, and if you don't know, we're about to tell you. We just pick a defensive player that we feel confident that they will get a sack this week. The person who gets the most right over the course of the season will get some type of prize between the two of us. And the person who gets wrong, they'll get a pie to the face. I don't know. We'll figure out something. We already have another bet for pie to the face. We'll figure something else out.
Well, it's something bad or embarrassing, I guess, is what we do.
Yeah, exactly. Let's go for the more embarrassing. Woo woo. Who is your person you're choosing for your sack lunch this week?
That's a great question. Who did I pick? We talked about this. All of a sudden, I'm thinking about it.
Stopped filling out the show sheet at a certain point, and I'm just like, wait, who the hell?
I know. Hold on. Let me look back at the schedule because I know. Oh no, I know who it was. I picked. I have a feeling it could be another guy, but I'm taking Kwity Paye for the Colts against the Bears. The Bears have not been good at stopping Kwity. Kwity is he's like an Alex Highsmith. You're going to get some good stuff here and there, but man, you're going to get some games where he gives you a whole lot of nothing. It just kind of happens. I said Alex Highsmith last week was my I just had a feeling he was going to do something. So far, Caleb Williams sacked 9 times in 2 games. The Colts have had a pretty good pass rush, even though they're just beat up. And I think the Bears are going to try to run all over them. There's no way someone doesn't get home for the Colts this week. I'm taking Kwity Paye, though. I got this really weird feeling Tyquan Lewis is going to get a sack, but I'm taking Kwity Paye. He is my pick this week for a sack against the Bears.
I am going to go with a guy that we've talked about quite a few times on the show today. I'm going to go Will McDonald. I think he gets the Jacoby Brissett at least one time. He's not going to have the 3-sack performance, I don't believe, tomorrow. If he does, then you consider yourself lucky, and this is a bonus. But I think he'll get you 1 sack tomorrow versus the New England Patriots. Do we have any more questions before we?
Yeah. I'll pop one up here. One that just popped up here about cornerback, and me and you, we do the DB talk. So D Hunter again. So yeah, that's it right there. You got it.
We'll get to him in a second. We'll get to David in a second. Thank you, David, for the question, for the comment. Then 1 second. Go ahead. So he says thoughts on Nate Hobbs going forward in Dynasty. Picked up Chris I'm gonna keep moving on and have to drop a cornerback between Hobbs, Kenny Moore, Sinistril. Thanks. What are your thoughts here, JT?
I actually like all 3 of those guys, especially if you're in a start cornerback league. I like Hobbs, I like Kenny Moore, and I like Sinistril. I like all 3 of those guys. Probably for me right now, I'm sticking Hobbs and Kenny Moore. If I have to drop Sinistril, I will. Only because I think he's probably the least well known of the group. and you could probably go back and pick him back up. If you have injuries or someone else kind of starts fading away, you could drop him, get him back up. I've got a ton of Kenny Moore. I've got a decent amount of Saints drill that I picked up this year. I think Hobbs is going to get it going. It's kind of been a slow start, but it's really just been matchups. He hasn't played a lot of guys that play in the slot. He hasn't had a lot of opportunities to make tackles and plays. I think I like Nate Hobbs a lot. He's a really good player. And I think Kenny Moore, he's always a lottery ticket. We've seen that guy. 2 pick sixes in a game last year was freaking incredible. He's kind of that starting to become more of that leader of that defense all around, just as guys get banged up. So I'm keeping Hobbs more. I'm dropping Saints because I think I can go back and get him if I need to pick him back up before other people do, just because he's a rookie. His name isn't as well known, is not as well out there unless you're a Michigan guy or like Jorge, you're a Commanders fan, and then you know him.
Indeed. And we got David here with a comment. D Hunter against his former team. Look, I'm saving the Daniil Hunter play for if I'm really desperate in the season and I need to go obvious. Daniil Hunter, boom, and then watch it not work out.
I was laughing. I was thinking about it earlier. I was like, I can't wait till the week we actually take like TJ Watt, Max Crosby, and then they all miss. On the weeks we've been waiting it out, like trying to take the other guys first, and then we're going to get on all the heavy hitters, and all of them are going to miss for us. That's the way it's going to work. It's just
of course. And it's just like, damn it, we're at a stalemate. Folks, before we get out of here, I just want to say, first of all, thank you so much. Thank you so much for staying up late, or if you're on the West Coast or Central, thank you for staying up later. We really appreciate you hanging out with us here on Shoot the Gap. Final tally before we go off air, we are at 1,196, so 4 away from 1,200. We really appreciate you all tuning in and helping us get to this mark over on YouTube in terms of subscribers. Really appreciate it. For those who are watching, whether you're on X, YouTube, TikTok, or Facebook, give us a follow at Fantasy and Frames, and don't forget to head over to fantasyandframes.com. We got our IDP plays and fades coming out tomorrow. We got our regular offense, quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, defense, special teams, plays and fades coming out. We got a bunch of specialty topic articles. We got our rankings coming out in the afternoon. Obviously, we want to get all this stuff out there before Thursday Night Football. Our very own Nate Markham, who, as far as Fantasy and Frames go, he's our godfather here at Fantasy and Frames. Just finished in terms of the Fantasy Pros Expert Consensus Ranking Competition, where it's over like 200 plus analysts who compete. Nate Markham was number 1 in IDP rankings last week for week 2. Obviously, we know what we're talking about here, folks. Nate definitely knows what he's talking about. So tune in, regularly here at Fantasy and Frames whenever we put on a show. Tomorrow we have Dynasty Evaluation with JT and John McGlynn. They're in, what is it, at 1 o'clock Eastern, 2 o'clock Eastern, something like that?
Yeah, well, John's always like, we both work late nights a lot. So a lot of times we're like, okay, when we get up, we get some coffee in us, we get around. So it's going to be in the early afternoon. I got the Stu with JT Brew NFL betting show going on. And then we'll be in early. We had a great crowd as we kind of did we went back and talked about week 1 last week. We're going to talk about week 2. Just go through what we liked, what we didn't like from what we saw fantasy perspective, went through all the games. Just absolutely great viewership last week, 2,300 people on a Wednesday afternoon. Hopefully we get that kind of crowd on Thursday this week. So yeah, join us tomorrow. Probably looking around noonish hour is when we'll try to kick that thing off.
David says, thanks, Josiah, next to subscribe. Thank you. Thank you, Charlene. Thank you, Angie. Thank you, Rugaroo. David, you asked, is it Servassier Dennis season yet? No, but it's getting close. Pick him up.
That's why I told him in the chat. I said, get him. I said, we just talked about him earlier in the show. We're starting to think it's Dennis is going to be the guy.
And don't forget, folks, we have our daily fantasy show where we talk about DraftKings lineups called The Daily Fix with Keith Fleming, Joe Matz, and Kevin Tompkins, Fridays at 9 p.m. Eastern. Get your DFS information. These guys put out such winning content. It's phenomenal. You all need to check it out. And of course, We wrap up every single week here at Fantasy and Frames doing our fantasy football kickoff show Sunday mornings, starting at 9 a.m. Eastern, going all the way till noon or a little past noon. We cover every single NFL game in the main slate and on Sunday Night Football and Monday Night Football. We cover all the fantasy relevant players in offense and defense. We have a few games that we throw in there just to have some fun and mix it up. And most importantly, we answer all of your start and sit questions. So, y'all, thank you so much for tuning in. This means the world to us. You all are the reason why we do what we do, and we truly appreciate you. So thank you very much. JT, any parting words before we head out of here?
Yeah, just great group tonight. Great questions from everybody throughout. Try to get as many as we could in on the show. Jorge, we usually try to keep this thing to an hour, but we rocked it tonight for an hour 45. So seemed like 30 minutes to me, man. I had a great time. So great show, great interaction from everybody. Thanks to everybody that got on, asked questions, join us every week, man. We love the IDP questions. So
all right. Well, for JT and Jorge, you all have a good rest of your evening. We'll see you on Sunday's kickoff show. Take care.